So, good evening, everyone. I would like to take a few moments to just welcome you to Wednesday, January 29th. Tonight, we will be focusing on a couple soft skill and topics that I think is pertinent for all of us. Many of us have been in the field for days, weeks, months, even decades, and we still have to resort back to our soft skills. Additionally, we'll dive into the curse of knowledge. For those who've been doing this for more than a month, more than a year, likely have forgotten how to be a novice. So, those will be some of the key topics that we will dive into tonight. So, I'm happy to say that I'm coming off of a high. I just had the luxury of sitting through some presentations for two undergrad students that I've been mentoring for the past 2 years. One of them was doing an introduction to ransomware as a service, where the other was talking about quantum computing and how it will impact encryption as we know it. Both of them knocked it out of the park. So I'm excited to use that energy from those two and discuss with you guys tonight. So let's dive into it. So I said soft skills are essential. So let's dive into what I mean by that. For those of us who worked in any field, not just cybersecurity, we understand that communication is imperative. But I'll also challenge you that active listening is something that we need to practice more. There's a reason we have two ears and one mouth. We have to be comfortable understanding both written and verbal communications when we're interacting with our management, our stakeholders, and our clients, as we need to do this on a daily basis. This could be understanding when to pick up the phone and call them. When is it appropriate to send an email? When is it appropriate to send something via Slack or Teams or Discord or any other medium such as that? And when is it time to do multiple? Different generations expect different communication styles. So we need to be able to meet the needs of a multi-generational workforce. Additionally, we have to use active listening. If you're like myself, it's easy to get distracted and start thinking about the answer to the question before it's even completed, thus missing what the person is telling you or asking you, because you've already decided what the question is and you've already dreamed up an answer in your head. So I challenge you with this first one. Practice your written communication and verbal communications. Be willing to think outside the box and understand that active listening is important in your communication. Be humble. Have humility. Be able to admit when you're wrong, and have the capability to ask for help. If you're like me, you came out guns blazing. I've got this. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. Nothing's going to stop me. And then you hit your first roadblock. That could be on day one, week one, year one of your job. So have humility. Be willing to admit you're wrong and ask for help. As knowledge sharing is important, we're never going to be SMEs in everything. The field is too vast. So practice active listening, communications, and your humility. Additionally, problem solving. You may be saying, Fletus, why does problem solving need to be called out? It's an understood. Well, it's not. For example, I've worked with many individuals that if the answer is not instant, they immediately go run and ask for help. Well, Fletus, you just said go ask for help. That's humility. Yes, but you need to at least be able to do your own research. You likely have had playbooks, run books, or you have access to documentation that you can go through. In today's generation, you're lucky. You have those in PDFs. You can use keyboard shortcuts such as Control F to find the word. I had to go pick up a book off the shelf and flip through the pages to find what I was looking for when I first started my career. Most of my documentation was in printed books. It wasn't in electronic format. So remember, you have information at your fingertips. Be willing and able to look for it. Additionally, you have Google, Bing, and generative AI. Ask questions to the search engines, to generative AI, to learn where to start. But as I've shared in other talks and other presentations, you have to know the answer, or at least be able to understand the topic before you ask the search engine and or generative AI for the answer, because it's easy to find false information on the web, especially inside of our large language models. And additionally, have a sense of humor. This even can be dry humor. Having banter, having the ability to pick on a friend or a coworker, have a healthy competition in your organization. Are you a person who can make others laugh? I like to tell dad jokes. I didn't start off with my normal communication joke, but I'm going to do it now. What do you do if you get locked out of your house? You talk to the lock, because communication is key. Yes, it's a corny joke, but it's enlightful. It's insightful, because communication is the key to opening up many doors and opportunities in your career. And it starts with having humility, being able to solve your own problems, and having a sense of humor in the workforce. Soft skills can make or break you. You have to be creative in your day job. As a SOC engineer, as a content engineer, as someone who's combing through logs day in and day out, you have to find creativity when searching through those. Regex is not always your fun. Writing KQL or SQL statements are not always easy. You may have to write creative mechanisms to download and massage and scrub the data to understand what you're going through. So exercise creativity in your problem solving and use it as a diversity in your team, because each and every one of us look at problems differently. We all have a different perspective. Research. I alluded to that in the problem solving a second ago. Do you understand how to research? Do you understand what effective research looks like? Can you go through just surface layer materials and able to understand how to dive into a topic deeper? I mentioned earlier the two students that I sat through their presentations. Both of them were just challenged with a single question. And they took that question, they dissected it to build a 20-minute presentation that they presented to us. They performed their own research on the discipline. They articulated that research with common language. Can you present stuff with a common language? And if you can't, can you define a common language? We've all been in presentations where someone talks over your head. We're going to talk about that in the second half of this session about the curse of knowledge. It's important that we can distill data and information into what I call the Fisher-Price mindset. 3 simple colors that can easily be articulated in 5 or 10 words concisely with clarity. Additionally, build your own home lab and play with this. There's example PCAPs that you can load into a Graylog or a free trial of Splunk or Sumo or other platforms out there. Lab environments are important for quickly failing. It's the mindset to fail fast, to learn. Again, research is key to the cyber defense side as a blue team member. You have to stay vigilant and understand how to detect and protect your organization from various attacks, and that comes from research. So take notes now. Find websites, white papers, podcasts, streaming sessions that you can learn and glean information from quickly and cheaply. Again, quickly and cheaply. That's the best way to get to your problem, is to be able to network and know where to find information real quickly. I do this by being active in several Discords, Slack communities, Signal communities. I can easily put a filler out because I know that others have done research on topics that I may not have, where I can also answer questions on research that I have completed, which drives me into the learning capacity. We're expected to read up on trends and vulnerabilities so that we can quickly adapt our skill sets. That may be on new cloud security, supply chain attacks, generative AI, quantum computing. As I mentioned earlier, I sat through a presentation earlier that's still blowing my mind. It could be ransomware as a service. They're just a subscription model. So understanding what those subscription models look like and how they apply. This all leads into how we understand cyber threats. And it's important that we take time to take those soft skills before we dive into what are our cyber threats and what are the different types of threats. Research is imperative to understand how the malicious actors will exploit our vulnerabilities in our systems, how they are there to disrupt, to steal our data, and cause harm. This can range from a single tinkering high school student who's able to get a hold of a piece of malware and just spread it into the school network. Or this could be a full-on organized group such as a nation state who are targeting attacks against your organization because they want your intellectual property. So that is a wrap up on how soft skills leads us into being able to sit down and be better practitioners and better leaders and better individuals with inside our organization. So now I'd like to transition over to what I call curse of knowledge. So what is the curse of knowledge? It's a cognitive biases. It's where we have biases based on the effects of how we as experts communicate. It makes it difficult for us to imagine not knowing what we know. It's an assumption of knowledge. As an expert in the field of whatever it is, you assume others have a similar background knowledge to you. This leads to communication gaps and misunderstandings. Going back to my soft skills presentation a second ago, it starts with having a common language, defining the terms. So when you use IOC, you've already told them that it's an indicator of compromise. Or if you say TTP, you've told them that's a tactic, technique, and procedure. Or even simpler, I've used ransomware. I've used quantum computing. I haven't defined those terms. There may be individuals on this call who have no idea what ransomware is. They just think of it as malware. Everything is malware. A virus is malware. A Trojan is malware. Ransomware is malware. Phishing is malware to them. So getting a common knowledge is important so that you can break down that assumption, that they understand the terminology that you're using. And we as experts struggle to simplify our concepts. I try to practice a 3-part series. I call it the Fisher-Price model, your 3 colors. For those who've been aware or have kids, you know that their toys are simple in color schemes. So can you articulate something in 5 or less words, very concisely and very clearly? This is what people call their elevator pitch. If you were to get into the elevator today and a C-level executive walks in and they ask who you are and what you do, you don't want to tell them that you put firewall blocks in, that you're writing snort rules or YARA rules or putting detections in place. You want to be able to articulate your value to the company. You want to simplify what you do in business terms that he or she is going to understand. Because we as technicians, as engineers, as technologists, can geek out very quickly over the knowledge that we have in our head. And we forget what it's like to not know that knowledge. So I challenge you now to think about where is the curse of knowledge in your workplace and in yourself. So why is it a problem? Because communication breaks down. We use jargon and skip critical steps, leaving the novice or the entry-level person confused and frustrated. If you've ever onboarded a new junior analyst and you said, just go do something, he or she may not understand what do something means. They may not know that you have a knowledge-based article that has code snippets, or they may not know where your playbooks reside because you haven't taken the time to show them. They may never have used Obsidian or Jupyter notebooks. They may not even know what those tools are. So make sure that you take time to break down the jargon, the terminologies that I've already used again in this conversation. I'm breaking my own by assuming you know what those platforms are. It leads to ineffective teaching. We struggle to convey basic concepts, assuming, again, that there is background knowledge. So it's important not to dumb it down, but to start with the simple things. So, for example, in an intro to cybersecurity class, you may want to assume that all that student knows is how to turn on their computer. And you want to build on top of that foundation. Depending on your audience, you may be able to skip some steps, but you want to start there first. Do they know how to log in? Do they understand, if they're on a Mac or a Windows, how they interact with their system? Do they know how to log in to certain systems? Do they understand the the ability to log in and the criticality of having a username and password, which we'll talk about later on. Do they understand data structures, data and hygiene, data integrity? Again, I'm using terms that you're going to have to define to them because they may not understand the buzzwords that we use day in and day out in our field. Thus, it leads to missed opportunities. Businesses and organizations fail to explain their value proposition early, losing potential customers and partners. So for those of you who are in technical sales, make sure you understand your audience when you get on the call. Talk to them, not under them, not over them, but to them. Be concise, be clear, be available, and make it start with common knowledge. Because you don't want communication to break down, causes frustration. It leads to ineffectiveness in your teaching. People get lost and they give up. Thus, you miss opportunities to groom a new junior person into a senior level, making them a valuable asset to your organization. Or you lose out on a new logo, causing your organization to miss new revenue opportunities. So the science behind curse of knowledge, it's a cognitive psychology. Research shows that experts' brains organize information differently. Thus, it affects our abilities to access the basic concepts. Our neural networks is how we think. Thus, we overshadow the simple pathways used by novices. Go all the way back. Remember the first time you were asked to tie your shoe. It's a very simple concept. We just say, just loop, swoop, and pull. Tell your 3-year-old, your 5-year-old that they may have started with bunny ears, and you may have to continue to double knot them. Start with the basics and make it easy, and even start with yourself. It's a technical writing exercise. You probably have all seen this. Write out a technical document and follow the steps. You'll quickly see where you have assumptions and gaps. This could be how to make a peanut butter sandwich. This is how to brush your teeth. Or in the analogy I just gave, how do you tie your shoes? And follow it step by step. Don't make any assumptions. I can tell you right now, you probably forgot to pick up the utensil. You didn't say how to spread the peanut butter. You didn't say put the shoe on first. You may be tying the shoe and it's not on your foot. Think about that before you give instructions. Make sure you understand the complexity that you're already thinking of because you've already assumed base knowledge. Assume a base understanding of how to do simple tasks. Memory consolidation. As we learn, our brain consolidates information. This process can make it hard to recall the earlier learning stages. I just talked about that with the analogies of brushing your teeth, making a peanut butter sandwich, or tying your shoes. So Fletus, how do I break the curse of knowledge? It's easy, but it's not. You have to think about a topic like you don't know anything about it. Teach yourself internally first, what do I wish I knew that I know now? And start there. Because ultimately, your goal is to allow people to learn from you and your mistakes so that they don't have to make them themselves. So educating them on how to go about it. Yes, you still need to let this person fail so that they learn how to get out of the ditch and how to recover and how to get back up. But at the end of the day, we have to work as one. We have to work as a team, and we have to learn how to do this. So I'm going to pause for a second, have a sip of water, and I'm going to check to see what's coming on in the chat because we haven't really paid attention to much of the chat since we've been talking right now. So I see I agree with the powerful. It's great. As Chris says, sometimes my manager did really well. She would prepare a package of jargon that would give me everything I needed to know. And Cage asked, what's the biggest generational difference that you have overcome? It's communication. I want to text. I want to Slack. I don't like using email. I don't want to pick up the phone and call you. It's not important for me to call someone. To be honest, I want to just send them a passive asynchronous message via Slack or Teams. I don't want to pick up the phone and call you unless I have to. But there's a need to get on the phone or to join a Zoom call or a Teams meeting and turn on your camera. It's important that you take time to meet the person where they're at. So going a little bit deeper, the dangers of being an expert. We overestimate. We assume that others have knowledge, leading to ineffective communications and missed opportunities to collaborate. We get tunnel vision. I've already done it a few times already on this call. I'm not following my own advice in my deck. I've assumed that you understand things already without even taking time to ask, because I get in my way and I've decided this is what I'm going to tell you. This is what I'm going to teach you. This is what I'm going to show you. Thus, I've alienated you because I've started using nomenclatures, complex language, or concepts that you feel like I'm now belittling you. Instead of talking to you, I've now talked over top of you. And this is not how you want to interact with individuals. You do not want to underestimate their value, because we all have intellect. We all have diversity. We all have learned things through formal training, the school of hard knocks, and or personal experiences, and or professional experiences, to be transparent. So when you get tunnel vision, for example, when you're on stage, let's all take the persona of a musician. You have bright lights on your face. You're standing at the microphone. If you only look down, you're only going to see the first 3 to 5 rows. But when you look up and look out, you now see the entire auditorium. You now see the hundreds, if not thousands, of people in front of you, and you can see the back door. Which of those allows you to connect with more people? Is it looking down at those first 3 rows and talking just to them? Or is it talking outward and over top of the crowd? It depends. Are you targeting just the front row because in some places that's the people who actually care because they're getting credit, or someone paid for their ticket and they don't have any investment to be there? Or is everyone signed up to hear you speak or hear you sing? And so everyone in the room needs to see eye contact. You need to walk across the stage and pay attention to them. You need to sing to them or speak to them, to keep with the analogy of the singer. So think about these times the next time you stand up and interact in a meeting, when you give a presentation, when you have the opportunity to share your knowledge as an SME. So strategies to overcome this: be self-aware, recognize your expertise, and actually consider your audience's perspective. Regularly seek feedback on your communication. Ask your peers, did that make sense? Do I need to explain it again? How would you have explained this? Teach it back to me. Practice simplification. Regularly explain your complex concepts in a non-expert way. Use analogies. I've used a few already. Use real-world examples to bridge the knowledge. For example, earlier, inside of a ransomware attack, we were talking about the web, the deep web, and the dark web. The iceberg analogy. I've seen it numerous times. It's a great way to connect with your audience. Additionally, on the presentation, talking about quantum computer, showing them the analogy that a coin can both be heads and tails at the same time until you put it down. These are analogies and real-world examples that connect with everyone, because now it's not just the ones and zero, it's a heads, tails. It's both simultaneously when it comes to quantum computing. And it's not until you smack the coin or let it drop that it actually becomes a head or tails. Those two analogies I just heard over less than a half an hour ago from the 2 students who were presenting their topics. I just reshared their analogies because they're applicable to breaking down the curse of knowledge. And be a continuous learner. Stay curious. Be open to new ideas. Engage with the beginners. I've given credit to these 2 students. They taught me something tonight. They rejuvenated me. They gave me energy to come and give this presentation. They didn't know the topics I was presenting on, but they aligned very closely with the soft skills and the curse of knowledge that we're talking about right now. So remind yourself what it's like to be the first day of school, the first day of a new job, the first time you move into a new place or move to a new state. All of these will help you break the curse of knowledge, because we've all had routines. We've all been comfortable. It's not until we step out and try something new that we're able to break down and be self-aware, to be able to practice the simplification that I'm talking about, and to be a continuous learner. So I've covered these last 2 topics in the last 25 minutes or so. Now I want to take something a little bit different and do a small demo for you. First, I want to start with a small challenge. Passwords. Curse of knowledge here. We've all used them. We've all been aware of them. So I'm going to let you read this little question on the screen here. Focusing on length more than complexity. The question is a 32 character, all lowercase password less secure than a 12 character upper lower number and symbol? Pause for a second while you drink. Think about that. It's not. And here's the math. So take your character set and raise it to the power of the length. We know in the English alphabet, there's 26 characters. So if you raise those 26 characters to a power of 32 length, you get this very large number. But all I want you to look at is the exponential at the end of it. It's E45. Now, let's take the 72 characters of upper, lower, number, and symbols and raise it to the power of the length of 12. Look at the end of that string again. The exponential is 22. You can see right here the complex password is mathematically weaker than the long password by 22 orders of magnitude. That's not common knowledge because NIST failed us many years ago when they told us have a minimum of 8 characters, but you need to use upper, lower, and symbols. Many of our users today still see that. They still think that they need to write a complex password. Many of your policies and procedures still force you to use all 4, if not 3 of the 4 of these, versus focusing on length. Even one more, you can do a shorter password, but add a multi-factor to it, such as biometrics, a one-time code, a PIN, not really multi-factor because it's still something you know, but adding another layer to it. So for the demo piece here, let me load this website in. For those who don't know, I'll demonstrate this live. So what this website's doing here, it shows you in real time what this is like. So if I just do, this is a length of 8 characters. This is a normal standard password that you would get. You can see by looking at the magnitude, an online attack just doing brute force would take about 7 years. An offline attack would take about 3 seconds. And then a massive attack would less than a second. But now I'm just going to add another 8 characters. I've now just changed it to 16 characters. I didn't add any more complexity. These are all still lower cases. I would fail your Microsoft land. I would fail what you would see inside of an Active Directory. But a website would support this unless they've got requirements similar. But you can see now, look, you've now got 14.4 billion trillion years for an online brute force attack. An offline fast is now still 1.400 centuries. And then a fast is still 15 years. I can tell you right now, I'm okay with 15 years for you to crack my password. Because you're only wanting to keep something secret as long as you need it to. Because in theory, I'm likely going to end that service. I'm going to change my password at least once during that 15 years. So think about that for a little bit. I can drop this website in the chat if anyone wants to play with it. This is not going off of a dictionary attack. So if you put a dictionary word in, you're not going to get the same response because dictionaries are already hashed. They already know these things. So we've talked for the last 30 some minutes about soft skills. We've talked about the curse of knowledge, and I have demoed a little bit of how passwords have been common knowledge that we've misused and we've misunderstood. So now I'd like to pause and let you reflect and see if there's any other questions. Yes, I see one from Chris here. It assumes your passcode isn't a common phrase that would be found in an existing breach. Yes, this is where the hash comes into play. That's why password reuse is, we've always asked people to reuse their passwords never. Create a unique passphrase for every account. But I will challenge you, if your passcode is still leaked, if you have multi-factor on, unless they can break your multi-factor, them knowing your password is a low fidelity. All they're going to be able to do is at least try to log you in, and they're going to get challenged. So on that note, I would like to give another shout out from Chris here. Reminder, it's now more important that you disable push notifications from your Okta, your Microsoft, and you use to a challenge response. Fletus, why do I say that? Because if you haven't heard, there's such thing called an MFA fatigue. If the adversary has gotten your leaked password from a data breach, such I've been pwned or pastebin attack, they can keep putting your password in over and over and over again, and you're going to keep getting a push notification to your phone. Going back to, we as the human are the primary attack vector. If you keep spamming me, eventually I'm going to roll over in my sleepy state and just accept it. And what did I just do? I gave that adversary permission to my account. On the flip side, Microsoft has switched to this and some others have switched to it. I now have to input the number that appears on my phone. It's usually a 2-digit number during that push notification. I don't just get to accept yes, no. I'm giving a 2-digit number that I have to type into the website. So that means the adversary would have to have physical access to my multi-factor device, i.e. cell phone, tablet, that has the push 2-digit number coming to, or they have to have found a way to steal my token. And that's a topic for a whole different conversation and a whole different day. So we've been at this now for 30 minutes. I appreciate you guys' time. I hope you found some insight as we talked about the importance of soft skills and the curse of knowledge. I challenge each and every one of you now to think through how you can articulate these things back tomorrow when you go back to the office, or when you get online, or when you go back to school. Because each and every one of us adds value to the organizations we're part of. You can even start by sharing this with your partner, your parents, your grandparents, your neighbor, because they may have a misnomer of what cybersecurity is and how to protect themselves. So I appreciate you guys' time. I hope you guys have a great evening for those who are still up, and a good morning for those who are outside of the U.S. And I thank you guys for your time, and have a great one. And until next time, if you've enjoyed this, I ask that you like and subscribe as I continue to push out more content. I've been committing for the last several weeks to put out a YouTube short, approximately a minute long, Monday through Friday. I will be doing these sessions on Wednesday nights for the foreseeable future. I may have to skip next week as I will be traveling to a conference. But either way, thank you for your time and have a great one. Until next